This is Phil Rosebrook, partner at Business Mentors, and you are listening to Restoration Edge. So today I'm really privileged to have Nick Durbino with Distance with us. And Nick, I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us and share with the restorers about how you can utilize technology to make their business a little stronger and better, and to really learn about the suite of things that you can deliver to restoration companies. But before we do that, I'd like to learn a little bit about you and why are you relevant to this audience. And so give me just an update, kind of a background on who you are from about 1,000 feet,
Yep.
and let's talk about you and your experiences relevant to restoration.
Yeah, sure, Phil. Thanks for having me. So I started my career in finance, in corporate finance with Deloitte. I helped companies, restoration companies, HVAC companies, e-commerce companies, retail companies, basically acquire capital and sell their businesses. All right. So I was helping them exit their companies. And after that, I spent some time investing in software companies, and then spent the better part of 15 years building and scaling software companies. Um, a big chunk of that was in the retail and e-commerce space. And so I know before this started recording, we were chatting a little bit about my background in e-commerce and why it's relevant for restoration. Well, ultimately, what we were talking about was my contention is that restoration is in a very similar place that retail was back 15 years ago, right? In terms of utilizing technology, going through this transformation where it's not completely reliant on human labor. How are we moving into the technology age within the industry? There are a lot of similarities there that retail went through and kind of navigated through e-commerce, and I think restoration is kind of going through it now. So what we've done is we've built a software solution with Distance that is a sales platform, and we have today onboarded about 600 restorers into the product, and it's become a really important tool for them to communicate with their customers, to manage their sales process. And so we've become very much a restoration focused platform over the course of the past 6 years.
It surprised me. This is the first time that I've ever heard restoration compared to e-commerce, and I find them to be really very different. One of them just providing a sales support for a product, and another one that is a service on location. And so the first time I had really seen that, and so explain that, kind of square that circle for me, and talk about how those things are very very similar, and what that ultimately means for you or for the restorer.
Yeah, so in retail and in restoration, especially on the residential side, we're talking about consumers. We're talking about homeowners, right? We're talking about people buying soap, people that have homes, people that are managing properties, and ultimately, those consumers all have very similar buying traits online, right? How they search for and find organizations, where you find them, how you advertise to them is the same. It's the same customer, right? They're buying a totally different service, but the way that you reach them, market to them, communicate with them, the way that they buy, the way that they consider products is the same. It is the same person, right? We're talking about the homeowner. And so when you look at it from that perspective and you start to dissect, well, how is a restoration business acquiring customers today? They get organic traffic and referrals, sure. They do PPC advertising, they do LSA advertising. They work with lead gen agencies. These are all very similar channels as e-commerce, right? There's a lot of similarity there. The only difference is the e-commerce world, because it evolved with the technology mindset, has become incredibly analytical. When you build an e-commerce company, you almost need like a PhD in digital advertising in order to become competitive. Whereas in the restoration space, we talk to a lot of our clients. They have no idea, how they're getting clients. It's like a magic box. They're saying, hey, it's all organic. It just keeps coming in. Now that's great, but that's also very dangerous, right? Because if you don't understand the mechanics of your business, right, what's to say that the music just stops at some point? So,
Right.
you need to have some repeatability. If you don't have the right inputs and outputs, it's very difficult to sell the business, because what am I buying? I have no idea, right? How are people finding it? So it's a black box. So you need to make sure that you're acquiring customers from different sources, and the retail and restoration space actually share a ton of similarities in terms of
Yeah.
those mechanics.
Okay, so you have a number of different solutions. So before we get like lose audience here, before they're trying to figure out if this is relevant or not, what I want to do, explain to me the different products and solutions you have for restoration companies. Maybe we'll go through those one at a time after you kind of lay out, here's the opportunity, and here's what we do.
Yeah, certainly. So we call ourselves a sales platform. So our whole objective is how do we help you capture leads and book more jobs? And so we have a few different ways of doing that. And really, when you think of a restoration business, the first place that most of the leads come from is the phone. So how do we make sure that the sales funnel within the phone system is as bulletproof as possible? So we have an AI voice solution that will act as a replacement for your after-hour call center, that will act as an overflow system, that will act as an IVR replacement for your lines to make sure that when someone calls in, they're getting a very consistent experience. The phone doesn't ring too many times, and everyone gets triaged as quickly as humanly possible in a very effective manner. That's part one. Part two is an inbound chat product, right? So a lot of folks are doing advertising. They're getting traffic coming to their website. Phil, I can't tell you how many times I see a website that has one call to action, which is call me. There are an inordinate number of statistics that tell us as soon as you add 2 or 3 calls to action, going back to the e-commerce mindset, when you add more mouse traps on your website, when you create more opportunity to connect with customers, you connect with more customers, you start more conversations, you qualify more leads, you book more jobs. Very simple. So having live chat, having SMS, having additional layers to connect with customers is incredibly important. So we do that, and our AI is able to actually handle those conversations. That's our inbound chat product. And then we have a third product, which is our outbound suite, which is our ability to actually instigate or start conversations with customers. Think of remarketing, think of chasing accounts receivables, chasing Google reviews, regrouping with clients. How do I take some of that and put it on autopilot? And so that's really kind of the 3 legs of our stool here: voice, chat, and outbound.
So let's talk about the first part about voice. What's your capacity? So I'm going to go. Maybe it's just I like for the 3 after hours calls I get a month that I'm just going to have somebody else do that instead of a live answering service because they're always very independent, undependable. Or maybe I've got a catastrophe coming and I've got 100 jobs due every single day, and I'm trying to keep up with that. So what is the capacity of that, and or is there? And does that impact the service at all?
We have clients that are using us to manage thousands of calls a month. We have some of our clients where we manage 5 calls a quarter.
Hmm.
And what I'll tell you is the ROI is great for both of them.
Hmm.
So let's run an example.
Yeah.
There's a $20 million company that uses us as a backup system. So like it has to the phone has to ring like 7 times before we answer.
Hmm.
And before we signed them on, they were like, we never miss a call. And I said, okay, maybe, but let's test it. So let's put this in. And would you agree with me that after 7 rings, that's a lost lead? Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we put that in. And over the course of a quarter, we answered 6 calls, which means 6 opportunities would have otherwise been lost. He converted 3 of those calls. One of them was a recon job. They made 6 figures in revenue from leads that they otherwise almost certainly would have lost. Right? This is an organization that really thought that they didn't miss any opportunities. They were missing opportunities. We have another organization that uses us after hours and during the day when the phone rings more than 3 times. And in that scenario, we're picking up a lot of calls and handling them and triaging them and sharing them with different folks in the organization appropriately. And then we have like a third kind of client that is using us 24/7, 365. So we've now replaced their IVR system. Someone calls in, we can triage if it's a new customer, an old customer, push it to accounts receivable if need be, and move those conversations along using natural language. So we have all kinds of different scenarios, all kinds of different clients using it in different ways. But ultimately, the idea here is, can we bulletproof your phone system and create a really effective way for you to manage the most important part of your sales funnel, which is the phone line. And
Right.
entrusting it to an after-hour call center solution. I mean, look, we've been doing this for 6 years now. I've not met one restorer who said, I love my after-hour call center. It's just not, it's not a thing that people say. And you know what? Fundamentally, it's a bit of a broken model. you have a low cost labor pool that has very little context on your business, answering these really highly expensive calls. And,
Hmm.
they have very little context. And you compare that to the most powerful technology ever created that's getting better and better every single day. And, it doesn't take much for us to compete against that. I think the bar, we've crossed that chasm many, many months ago.
Right.
And I would say we're kind of veering into like what a good CSR that you would hire can do and accomplish.
One of the things that just kind of a gut feeling here out of it. Are you finding there's a pushback from the actual person calling in that I'm talking to a computer? I want to talk to a person, especially in a time of need. What are you seeing, and what's your real world experience in that?
Yeah. So I would say 6 to 12 months ago, we certainly were experiencing more of that. And I think everyone in the industry was. And I think it's a function of three things, Phil. One is how good is the technology, right? At what point do you cross the chasm? Like you and I would both agree if we started chatting with an AI, you would not be able to tell. Like in an actual SMS conversation
Yeah.
or a live chat there's no way you could tell. It's incredibly. You might be able to tell because it's so good. You're like,
Right.
hey, this is so fast. This is so good. This must be AI. Voice, right, has been a lagging technology relative to chat, but it has gotten so good recently. And I think folks who've maybe trialed it 6 months ago, or even 3 months ago, or definitely a year ago, um, would be incredibly impressed with the level of finesse that these models are able to reproduce. Very little latency, if any, emotion detection. So, if a client calls in and they're crying, whatever the case may be, the AI actually adjusts its voice to accommodate that emotion. There's actually some subtle background noise that we now add into the conversations because it creates a more comfortable environment. Like when it's too sterile and you're just talking to someone, it's like pitch quiet, and all you hear is a voice. That's not a natural setting. We're used to calling organizations with a little bit of clatter, a little bit of background noise. So how do you add a little bit of that to make it feel a little bit more comfortable? So I would say that's kind of one piece of it. The technology has gotten really good. The second piece, I think consumers have gotten more and more used to engaging with this technology and are more comfortable with it.
Mm.
So, are we in a world where 100% of consumers are excited to speak to AI? Of course not. But we're also living in a world where 100% of consumers are also not excited to speak to humans either. So fundamentally, it cuts both ways. And you have to ask yourself, what are we comparing ourselves to? Are you
Mm.
comparing this to an after-hour call center solution, or are you comparing it to Phil answering the phone on the first line? Obviously, Phil's going to do a great job, a much better job than any technology in today's day and age will be able to do, at least for the time being. Um, but Phil can't answer all the calls, right? You have to hire people, and that's where we fit in. Where do we rank relative to your CSRs? Where do we rank relative to your call center? If you don't have a call center and you're answering stuff and you're missing stuff, well, there's actually no risk because then we're comparing ourselves to a missed call. And in that scenario, it's a much better outcome having our AI pick up versus you not picking up at all. So it really depends on
Yeah.
how you're measuring this and what you're comparing it to.
How do you get a computer to deliver empathy? Because we know that that's one of the biggest things. Like these people are dealing with big trauma in their life, and we want to try to make them at ease before we're going to say we can solve your problem. But how do you deliver empathy?
Well, I think there's two things. One is the fundamental infrastructure of a lot of these models already have done that. So there's a lot of empathy actually pre-built in at the model layer. Then on top of that, if you train it appropriately, you can add additional layers of empathy above and beyond that. If you choose the right voice, the right model settings, etc., you're able to kind of add to that. So I'll give you a very real example. One of our clients had, and this was their first time using the emphatic, model, the model with empathy. This woman called in, slightly older, and she had just lost her husband, and there was a flood in her house. And as you can imagine, her husband was the person that would usually take care
Mm.
of these types of things. And so she was besides herself. She was crying. She was incredibly emotional. That was a smaller organization that was consistently missing calls. And so they said, okay, we're gonna put this AI in because this is gonna help us. Like the worst scenario for that woman would have been to call and like no one picks up, and then she goes on to the next number, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not a great situation. So our AI picks up, and the woman's crying. The AI had the sense of mind to let this woman kind of, say her piece, and she was crying, she was irate, she maybe talked for 90 seconds. When she was done talking, the response was so crisp. It was, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. Let's get this water issue sorted for you." And it continued along the playbook. That is probably a better response than most CSRs would give. That was certainly a better response than their after hour call center had done previously.
Yeah.
And so, the solution's quite sophisticated. It works pretty, it works better than people think. And I think even in an emergency situation, it does a really good job of piecing these things together. What I'll also say is the job of the AI is not to stay on the phone for 15 minutes and kind of run through the process. It's not a dispatcher, right? So
Right.
our goal when we're answering a phone is this an emergency? If it's not an emergency, if someone's freaking out because they have a scratch on their wall and they think it's asbestos, right? We're not gonna wake Phil up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to this person's house. They're going to set expectations around next steps. If it is a water issue with a live leak and it needs to go to dispatch, fantastic. We are now going to transfer you to the appropriate dispatch, the appropriate tech, or whatever the case may be. So our calls are like a minute or two, right? Like we
Yeah.
are qualifying and triaging. Our job is to kind of, Google, their job is to get you to the place that you need to go. They don't want
Yeah.
to sit there and like chit chat with you here for 15 minutes. So, we do our job well. And when it's really done effectively and efficiently, it's in and out. And so we're not sitting here having like very long conversations with these end customers. And so it's quite an effective tool in that regard.
Yeah, fascinating. Um, so I think one of the functions in a kind of that intake on the calls, uh, I don't know the companies do it really well. It's an opportunity maybe is the sales skills, is converting that call to a job.
Yeah.
And what elements do you have kind of built into your program that enhance that program or enhance that
Well, it really
opportunity?
depends on what kind of call we're talking about, right? So I'll give you a few different examples. Someone calls in during the day from a 33-mile number.
Hmm.
Our objective is to just make sure you're a qualified lead. And we have 30 seconds to do that. And if you are a qualified lead, we pass you on to someone who's going to collect your information and take next steps. If you're not a qualified lead, we got to hang up that phone before our client gets charged $1,000, right? So
Yeah.
our job is really simply to be an expert qualifier. And a lot of folks don't like to use 33-mile and some of these tools because there's too much, the signal to noise ratio doesn't make sense. I spend too much time trying to qualify this stuff and my team is wasting their time. Some are good, some are bad. But if you could put it on autopilot, then all of a sudden I'm just delivering the good leads to you. And
Yeah.
so then it becomes interesting. I'll give you another example. Overflow. All right. Storm surges. What's the objective of the AI in that scenario? The AI's objective is to qualify leads in the queue, right? So instead of
Yep.
folks sitting on hold for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, I'm going to go in and the AI is going to answer all these calls, qualify the deals so that your team has visibility on what's in the pipe. So we understand, hey, on hold on number 2 position is Susie, whose gutter broke. And on number 3 position is a huge commercial loss that's going to be 7 figures. Just because someone called 30 seconds before, you need to have visibility of this stuff. And oftentimes, if someone's sitting on hold, you have zero visibility of what's happening. If they hang up the phone, you're never going to hear from them again. So how do we ensure that calls get answered quickly? That's another strategy that the AI can do. That's an overflow strategy, right? And so maybe it's about, sure, can I book more jobs
Yeah.
during a storm surge? Absolutely. But even more important, can I qualify the leads because I have a supply demand imbalance? I don't have enough supply to meet the demand. So how do I make sure that my supply is working on the best jobs at the moment? How do I know they're the best jobs if I don't even have visibility into some of them? So, our job there is a little bit different. So, you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
It's a bit
Yep.
like depending on the scenario, our
Sure.
tool will be optimizing for different things.
Yeah, and so example, if I am doing retail services, I'm doing duct cleaning or carpet cleaning, or maybe I've got a plumbing department built in. So any of that stuff, I'm doing intake, and then I've got a some sort of a way to qualify, and it's all
Yeah.
built into
So
whatever the scripts are. And
we have actually a pricing mechanism. So we
hmm,
can go in and actually
wow,
do rebuttals. We can go in and train the AI to say, okay, well, if someone calls in and let's say you're a premium provider, right? You have
hmm,
like great service, and we have this often, right? Hey, we are not the cheapest company, but we provide a great service. Our people are
hmm,
more qualified. You're not going to have to come back in 6 months
yeah,
because the thing, unraveled, whatever the case may be. So our AI is trained on that. So if someone comes in and says, hey, this is too expensive, well, we have the scripting in place to combat that. And the AI is very
hmm.
proficient at kind of executing that playbook.
Probably solves a lot of problems. I think those are probably some of the harder things to deal with for any sort of intake system. So let's jump to the next one. You talked about you want to take the inbound or outbound.
Yeah. Inbound
Okay,
is such a underappreciated tool in
okay.
in this space.
So explain
Um,
that first to somebody who, in just layman's term, what that means, so we don't miss
yeah,
over what the obvious part of that.
I come to your website, I come to your Google Business profile page. There's one way to get into your office, right? I got to call, right? That's
Hmm.
the only way for me to engage with you. I have to call the phone number. It has to ring. Someone has to pick up, and I have to call. Let me ask you, Phil, if I am in a meeting and I have a mold issue and I'm a
Hmm.
price seeker, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to use your, actually, I have questions. I want to know about price. I want to know about X and Y and whatever. And, I'm a millennial and I don't want to call. A lot of people don't like calling. So what
Right.
happens when they're confronted with a website that just calls and what happens is people open up like 9 tabs. They Google something, 9 tabs are open, and then they're going through it like bullets and they're trying to figure out very quickly. This is like a quick assessment. A lot of people are not sitting there making like a value judgment and spending 15 minutes auditing websites, etc. Like people make very quick decisions on the internet. Okay. And so if you do not have modalities to connect with different customers in different scenarios, you are missing out on leads.
Hmm.
Plain and simply. There are people that are looking at your website. Go and look at your traffic. I would encourage all the listeners on this call, go and look at your traffic. If you get 100 leads, if you get 100 visits a month of qualified customers, qualified leads, you're not getting 100 calls, right? There's a
Hmm.
discrepancy between the number of visitors you're getting that are qualified and the number of qualified leads you're getting, right? How do you mend that gap? How do you increase the yield of traffic? Think of like someone who
Hmm.
walks into a store. I'll go back to a retail example.
Yeah,
Think of,
good.
make this whole, someone walks into a store and there's one person working at the cash, right? And they don't say hi to you. You just kind of walk in, you do a circle, you don't find what you're looking for, you leave. Were you not a qualified buyer? Were you not interested in purchasing something? I don't know. I didn't talk to you. I didn't have a
Huh.
conversation with you. You were in and out. You didn't have someone at the front of the store saying hi. You didn't have someone that could have greeted that person, qualified them, brought them into your sales motion. You didn't have it. It wasn't available. And so you don't know. You're
Hmm.
missing out on those opportunities. So, especially if you're doing mold work, especially if you have non emergency type services that you offer,
Hmm.
it is an extremely valuable tool. If you're doing carpet cleaning or duct work, etc., I mean, I would say it would be sacrosanct if you do not have it. It is
Yeah.
absolutely critical, and you'll probably be generating 10 to 15% of your leads, if not more, coming from those channels.
Is there more to that, or some other element that comes to that, or
Yeah,
we
there's a bunch
jump to
to
the
it. We
outbound part of it?
can, yeah, I mean, there's live chat, which is those little bubbles that pop up on the
Yeah.
website. So that when we talk about inbound, that's live chat exists. There's SMS. Those SMSs can be on the website. Hey, text us 24/7, etc. But they can also be on third-party sites like your Google Business Profile page,
Hmm.
your Google Listing Service ads. So when I go onto the Google profile, now I also have different ways to connect with customers. It could also be on social platforms, Facebook and Instagram. So if you have customers that are kind of pinging you or finding you there, how do I automatically engage leads there directly from a direct
Hmm.
message immediately and have them, price them, quote them, book them, whatever the case may be. So now it's not just about my website, it's about my digital presence. Actually, not even my digital presence, because we have clients that put the phone number on a truck or they put it on a lanyard or whatever, and all of a sudden it's out and about, and they're communicating that number
Hmm.
to the world, in an effort to drive leads into the pipe, right? So that's really what it's about. It's about kind of creating tentacles out there into the world and making sure that you're capturing these different customers that that want a different way of communicating.
Yeah. And with your technology, are you doing anything to draw customers in or just to capture them when they're there? Are you doing anything with lead sources or SEO or any sort of marketing elements?
It's a great question because a lot of folks might confuse us with a marketing agency. We are not a marketing agency. You'll pay a marketing agency to take your money and
Hmm.
to spend it on Google and Facebook and generate a return,
Yeah.
right? Our goal is to sit below that and make
Okay.
sure that you're getting the best ROI possible, right? To
Perfect.
make sure that when those leads come in, you have ways to connect with them fast. And when I say fast, Phil, I don't mean I call them back in 3 minutes. I mean, the
Yeah.
phone doesn't ring more than twice. I mean, I'm going to text them back within, within an hour. I mean, like you have 30 seconds to answer a message. And that kind of speed is what we're talking about here.
Mm. Awesome.
And that's where we live. Yeah. Now, do we help you generate new leads? Yes, right. Because if you don't have live chat today, I guarantee you, you're losing. You're not taking
Yeah.
advantage. Like you have like a clogged pipe. Like there's all this friction that you need to remove to generate more lead. You've already paid for those leads. You just don't have the tooling to connect with those people fast enough.
I love the analogy of the person standing at the cash register at the front and not acknowledging a customer that came in. So I think
It
that just
happens
makes it adds a
all.
lot of clarity to sort of a good visual to
Yeah.
what you mentioned.
Well, I will say something as well. The internet is a serendipity engine, Phil. So, what I mean by that is you never know what is coming around the pipe. We've had clients generate 6 and 7 figure deals from a commercial lead coming in through a live chat on a Friday night.
Mm,
You just
mm.
don't know. You just don't know when and how and where they're gonna pop out. So just like being opportunistic and having that ability to connect with customers no matter what, no matter when,
Mm.
is with a level of consistency is only going to serve you well, as you build your
Mm.
company.
Absolutely. And it's kind of agnostic to you mentioned residential and commercial before, and doesn't matter. You can't
It doesn't
tell
matter.
on the
No, we have
inbound. You can't really tell.
Yeah, you really have no idea. We even have like a form system. So, this is a really
Mm.
cool concept. A lot of people have forms on their websites. Almost everyone has a form. You go to a form. The form is the worst thing since the VHS. Okay. Like if you have a form on your website, it's like having a VCR player, right? It's like you got to change that out and have something a little bit more effective. Because when you think of what a form does, someone puts in a bunch of information, clicks submit, it sends you an email. You got to read that email. You got to get in touch with the person. You're going back and forget it. Like, you're going to spend
Mm.
a week trying to get in touch with someone or hours at the best, like there's no way that's happening quickly. So you could keep the form, but what we do is we add some AI and some automation in it. So as soon as someone clicks submit, it automatically sends an SMS to the customer or the lead. So Phil,
Mm.
you submit a form, boom, you get a text message 5 seconds later. Hey Phil, thanks so much for filling out the form. It seems like you're looking at I have some follow-up questions, and now I'm taking something that otherwise would take a long
Mm.
time, and I'm turning it into an instant conversation. I'm moving you from form to text message immediately.
Before we get to outbound stuff, you had mentioned ROI a couple times, and especially in context of maybe this inbound intake. Is there an ROI tracker, or something that you guys use to display the or show the proof of concept or what you've done? It shows maybe some sort of a that what are the scoreboard metrics
Yeah,
for your service?
it's a great question. I mean, ultimately, we don't have visibility into the close, right? Because the close
Mm,
happens somewhere else, so we can't. You have to tell us like what actually closed. But what we will tell you is how many conversations we've engaged with, right? How many
mm,
calls, how many chats, how many messages, where those are coming from, etc. So you have a pretty good idea of what your top and middle of funnel looks like, and how many opportunities you're generating. And then from there, if your conversion rate's 50%, can we help you make it 55
yeah,
or
yeah.
60%? So you can kind of back of the envelope it pretty quickly. But because of the nature of restoration projects, which is, a MIT job might be 5 to 10K, a recon job might be, 5, 6 figures of potential revenue. Our product's not very expensive. So it doesn't
Right.
take a lot. Like one job that comes in that we help catch that you otherwise would have lost, or we help catch that you never would have received in the first place. I mean, you're looking at a 5 to 10x ROI on our software for the entire year
For
from
one job.
one project.
Perfect.
So The
That's it.
ROI on
Yeah.
this stuff is like, I think that's why probably it resonates with a lot of restorers, because the math is so simple. Warren
Mm.
Buffett says, I don't invest in products or companies unless I could do the math on the back of an envelope. Well, you can certainly do the math on our product on the back of an envelope.
Let's talk about outbound for a minute, because I think that's a real big point for a lot of people, whether it's
Yeah.
accounts receivable or just contacting customers or some sort of a follow up. Maybe I've got a list of all my pending jobs. What is your product in relation to that? What are the various levels you guys can get inbound or involved, and let's say the success points or where it's relevant, or maybe the highest impact ideas that you guys are working off of?
Yeah. So the outbound product works in two ways. The first way is what we call campaigns. And campaigns are really meant to be exactly that, a campaign to re-engage customers, right? So how do I go out, and this is particularly relevant if you have the opportunity to have repeat customers, right? So if I should go back and say, hey, you bought from me 6 months ago, we launched a new service, or hey, it's duck season, it's time to redo your ducks, and I want to go out and I want to message my clients seasonally to push a promotion, to re-engage.
Mm.
I upload a list, I create a very custom message that will pull the data from your CRM. So hey Phil, hey John, last time we spoke in December, in May, it's going to be contextually relevant. So it's not like, thank you for contacting ABC Corp. We just launched our duck cleaning service. Press one to no. It's got to feel like it's really
Yeah.
specific. So that's part one of what we do. And then when someone replies, we can have AI even continue the conversation, or you can have a human continue the conversation. But a campaign is meant to automatically send a bulk number of messages that feel super personal to a segment or to all of your list. So for especially people who do roofs and things of that nature, like a lot of them don't re-engage customers. Like I
Right.
did your siding, like, hey, we have a promotion on roofing, whatever the case may be. We have clients even using this to just re-engage customers ahead of a storm. Hey,
Mm.
John, last time we worked on your basement project 6 months ago, blah, 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 blah. Big storm coming. Here's how you can protect your property. I'm not selling you anything. I'm planting a seed.
Yep.
Right. I'm planting a seed. So when pipes start to burst and I sent 1,000 messages, I'm going to get a bunch of responses because I'm top of mind. So that's a
Mm.
really simple way of using campaigns to re-engage customers. Then we have something called automations. And automations work very similarly, except you don't have to upload anything. It's just like when this happens, this happens. So for example, when an account's receivable is like 30 days overdue, we're going to reach out to the customer to see what's up, right? To
Right.
re-engage them. When a job is marked as complete, we're going to ask them for a Google review. And it's not going to be, again, press one to leave a Google review. It's
Mm.
hey, Phil, how was your experience with Bob on our team? And if you say, hey, it was great, fantastic, would you mind leaving us a review? Here's a link. We're a family business, would appreciate your support, right? Those are conversations that actually generate outcomes. Another really good use case is following up with client projects ahead of a weekend, right? Hey, Friday
Mm-hmm.
afternoon, I've got 20 projects outstanding. Let me make sure things are not going to blow up ahead of a
Yeah.
weekend. Hey, Bill. Hey, John. How's Ryan doing on our team? I want to make sure everything's good ahead of the weekend, right? I'm doing a quick sanity check, thumbs up, thumbs down on
Yep.
projects to make sure I'm getting those good reviews. I'm getting ahead of issues, etc. So, we think of the sales process as really a holistic process. It starts when you're capturing a lead, but it ends when you get paid and when you get a Google review, right? That
Right.
is a
Right.
full end-to-end sales process. You're always selling. You're always generating, touch points in those conversations. And so our outbound product can be automated to deliver those communications at different timestamps with different tools, QuickBook, Albi, you name it. Or it can be done more manually by uploading a list, being a little creative, and sending out messages.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is when you have a real dynamic product like you do. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm working 70-hour weeks. The old joke was, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I only work half days. You just pick which 12 hours.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so if I've got all this stuff going on and I'm trying to figure out, I've got this amazing tool. Like I got a sports car and I can't even get it out of the garage. What is that? What's the customer engagement? How's this working where you're suggesting opportunities? You're saying, let's do this campaign. Let's track into this outbound. Let's look at these chat. How am I managing, or how are you helping this restorer who is overwhelmed manage the opportunities that are coming from your product and successfully engage and take advantage of those opportunities.
Well, I would say none of our clients start by doing all this stuff in one shot, right? Most of our clients come to us and they have a very pernicious pain point, right? I am getting destroyed with my phone system, right? Or
Mm,
I really need to get a handle on these LSA leads, or whatever the case is. So it's very easy for us to start with the pressing item of the day and solve that first, and then we have kind of two models, Phil, with our product. The first model is we'll onboard you to the product. It's not expensive at all, so we help
mm,
set it up for you. At that point, it's almost set it and forget it, but it's really easy for you to make edits and
mm,
changes and things of that nature. Like we have on our chat product, you could literally go into our playground feature, start chatting with the AI, look at the responses, and then give it feedback there, then and there to train
mm,
it. So you could literally have a training conversation with the AI and make it better. So like we made it very, very easy for folks to use it. And then we have other solutions where it's much more custom, much more hands-on on our end, where we quarterback the entire product for our clients, and we'll take
mm,
it's pretty much a white glove solution. So we accommodate very different scenarios. And sometimes we have big companies using our self-serve tool, set it and forget it. They have a very narrow use case. And sometimes we have smaller companies where we're managing, a large number of conversations for them across
mm,
a bunch of different stuff, and they go the other route. So it has less to do with size and has more to do with like what problem are we solving for you and how much bandwidth do you have. So
mm.
which bucket do we place you in? But ultimately, when we have a conversation with prospects and clients, our job on those calls is to identify where the biggest pain point is and how we can solve that for them and make it very real and tangible for them in that call.
Yeah, there's a couple things that, in my mind's spinning with opportunities here and ways to engage or use this, which is really amazing. Uh, the One of the things I'm thinking is, as entrepreneurs, we're looking and saying AI is really, really important to my business. I need to do something with it, and it's overwhelming to think AI as a solution. It's like the AI could do everything, yet people
Yeah.
don't really know where to properly apply it and use it in the company. And so I like outsourcing this to the people who spent a lot of time in development and consideration of what these opportunities are. And I think that's where this plays really well. I like that restoration. You know the challenges and problems that we're experiencing. Every restoration company you work with, you add more tools to your toolbox. And the cool thing about AI is it's constantly learning and it's evolving. And just the product itself continues to develop and become better over time. And so I guess the one thing I'm just going to give you an affirmation and say, given the way the world's changing, given the way that we can access opportunities and results from processes that need to be applied through AI, you guys have a really, really fantastic solution that restorers can and should go grab a hold of and say, okay, let me try one of them. Let's see how this, let's see how it fits. Let's try some solution and let's see where this takes us. And then we can see how we can get a little further. So I hope I'm thinking about this right because,
Yeah.
as I say, this technology can be elusive and it can be an extremely powerful resource in our companies. And so it just seems
Yeah.
to make sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately, I think, we talked about three pillars. I'd be hard pressed to find any organization. We work with some really sophisticated, larger enterprises, $100 million plus in revenue, um, that still struggle on a lot of these touch points. And so it doesn't matter if you're a one truck business or you're a $10 million company or a $30 million company. I know that there's pain here in different ways, in different shapes, and different forms. So, figuring out what that pain is, where to start, is kind of the name of the game. And so most of our clients will come to us with a very specific pain point. But we do get folks who are like just interested, and then we kind of have to
Yeah.
dig for, where would be the best place to start and implement something like that.
I kind of liken this to needing to go see a physician or even a psychologist for some problem that I'm experiencing, and so you have to sit on your couch for a little while, your exam table, and there's
Exactly.
probably some basic things that you guys do which would be similar to that or just analogous to that. We're going to check some pulse and we're going to check some blood pressures and
Right.
make sure that we have the
Well,
diagnostics right so we can apply a
here's
solution to fit the right problem.
yeah. Well, here's like an interesting example, right? I've hired a CSR and she's phenomenal, but she's spending like 30% of her time or his time, messaging people after that, and it's like, okay, well, what would the universe look like if they didn't have to do that anymore?
Hmm.
Where would they reallocate their energy? Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And they could do A, B, and C instead. I'm like, fantastic. So we just figured out the problem, right? It was a problem that they didn't realize, right? Because it's a hidden problem, which is, hey, my team is spending their time on the wrong things. You would never hire an accountant who spends 3/4 of his day like with a calculator adding up rows in an Excel sheet. Like it wouldn't make any sense. You could do a formula, it's done in 3 seconds, right? Like they're better served doing other things. And so if you're having the same conversations and they're not valuable outcomes, like you can reallocate. As a business owner, you have two decisions to make. How do I spend labor and capital? How do I allocate those resources to achieve good outcomes? And so as a business owner, you got to think through how that's being done today and how that can be improved. And with technology, it's fundamentally an opportunity to optimize labor and capital. I can create these automations. I can create infrastructure that helps me become more profitable, so I can pay my employees better. I can reallocate to what they're doing to make it more interesting, more engaging, more valuable. And usually everybody wins in that scenario. I refuse to acknowledge the boogeyman of AI, right? That it's going to come and eat all the jobs. If you actually look at a lot of the statistics today, even software engineering, software is dead. No one's going to write code anymore. All these AI, the need for good software engineers has skyrocketed because of AI. The need for consultants, AI is dead. There's no need for McKinsey. There's no need. It's one of the biggest categories right now is using consultants to implement this stuff in businesses. And so, there's always this idea that technology is going to replace, but it's going to replace it with something. It's not just going to replace it with technology. It's going to replace it with other jobs are going to get created. There's job loss and job creation. So it's a really exciting time to be working in this category. And I think a lot of our clients are really excited to start practicing and implementing this stuff in their business and seeing results.
Fascinating. Yes, those horse buggy whip manufacturers, they did lose their jobs, but those people found something much more high value to be doing. So
Exactly.
that's good. Those factories are not sitting empty right now.
Exactly.
Um, so let's talk as much as you can into dollars and cents. And the reason I say can because I had a college professor whose favorite answer to what any of his questions was depends. It's like, depends on what. And
Yeah.
so the cost of this in your program is going to be, it depends. And the one thing that you have mentioned is that it is going to save time over the alternative. One of the things you also had mentioned is we're not looking to remove people from the business, but we're looking to remove steps from process. We're looking to speed cycle time. We're looking to improve closing ratios and to be more effective on the things that we're doing, and then working to higher level,
Yeah.
higher value activities. So all those things being said, there is an ROI for what you're doing, and you've discussed a number of ways that you can do that. But how should they think about cost for these different services? And you talked about 3 levels of service. And so if you could kind of contextualize that a little bit.
Super transparent, Phil. Our pricing obviously depends on volume and it depends on complexity and things of that nature. But I would say we have a lot of restorers that are paying $99 a month, $250 a month, $500 a month. It really depends on those prices have different things included in them. Right. But my point is, this is not like, oh, I got to spend thousands of dollars a month to get something like this set up. No, by all means. The idea here is like, you should be paying for value. You should be paying for value. And our contention as a technology business is, can we make this 10x better at 10x cheaper a price? Right. That is where real disruption happens. Where if I can tell you, hey, I can 10x this outcome for 10x cheaper, right, for 90% of the cost, for 10% of the cost, all of a sudden that's a really big value driver for me as a business owner. And so that is our objective. So, most people just, I hate to use after hours as a punching bag, but most people are paying an after hour call center solution hundreds of dollars a month. And, they'll replace that solution with distance and pay probably the same, if not less money, but get everything we just talked about.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of value. We're trying to pack a really tight punch in a very small kind of economic bundle. for our clients.
I always like Peter Diamandis is talking about democratizing the products or solutions, whatever we have. So once you do that, you can make the price kind of a no-brainer price
Yeah,
because you just did it at scale.
exactly. That's kind of the objective for us. So we want to make sure, like, one of our biggest things is, like, we want to make sure we're not overpricing our clients, because our clients get really excited. Like, I want to go into that package, and I'm like, oh, I don't think you should. Like, I'm constantly, like,
Yeah.
unselling people on, like, a more expensive bundle, because I don't think they need it, right? And the last thing that we want as an organization is for you to be spending, hey, like, I bought a train when all I needed was a bicycle, right? And like, that's not, it's not going to get you, they're both going to get you to a destination, but it's totally unnecessary to spend that amount of money and have that much horsepower for what you're looking for.
Yeah, got my beautiful Ferrari to drive around the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Can't leave,
exactly.
but
Right? To
yeah.
go get milk. Yeah. Exactly.
Um, okay, what's like a takeaway for somebody if they're watching this and saying, what do you want them to know they can accomplish or do if they just contact you, big problem you're solving, or some sort of a takeaway here, a great message for that.
Yeah, I would say most restorers don't realize that they could be generating 10, 20, 30% more revenue
Hmm.
without spending more money on marketing.
Wow. Yeah.
So there is a huge arbitrage. There's a huge opportunity to just make certain parts of your sales motion more effective and efficient. And when you do that, the results, especially in restoration, where contract values can get very, very high, does not take much for us to make improvements there to drive really great outcomes. The number of times we've generated in, like, a 30 to 60-day period for a small to medium sized restorer, 6 figures of revenue is astounding. It does not cease to amaze me. And I don't want to say it's easy, but I want to say it's obvious. There's very obvious things that we could be doing as restorers, as folks in this industry, to make the process of acquiring customers and
Hmm.
engaging with them more effective and efficient. And that's really what we're all about.
It's fantastic. I just imagining like a chat bot. I need to have this attached into the podcast so they can grab and jump at it right there because that was such a good message, and it's kind of a no brainer at that point. And just reaching and contacting you, it would be silly not to do that just to learn a little bit more because everybody's
Yeah.
got these solutions, and maybe it's the backup to the backup for the on call after hours weekend service that gets them started to see how this could all work and where it makes sense.
100%. I think testing and playing with the product is great, and we will share a special link, Phil, for folks from your audience to book meetings directly with me, not even with my sales team. Like, they will get a direct conversation with me. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. We'll have a 30-minute session where we'll walk through your particular business, and I'll show you how this applies to your particular company, right? We'll look at it through that lens. Obviously, if they want to hear more, they can go to distance.so. We have some information on the website about our product and so on and so forth. But for your listeners, we'll give them a special discount and as well a special link to book.
Okay.
As well. Yeah.
What does SO stand for? That's new.
So you can buy all kinds of domains. So
Yeah.
distance.com is owned by a Fortune 500 company. So at some point, if we have to buy it, that means we have to raise our prices. So right now we're choosing to give our restorers a better deal. But it's a domain that a lot of technology companies use. A lot of different countries have different names, and so .so, .co, .ca, they are all just different different endings. So it doesn't mean anything. It's just one of our favorite technology companies ends in .so, and so we said, okay, if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for us. So
Perfect.
we ended up following suit. Yeah.
I learned something new today. There you go. Fantastic. I appreciate that. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for your time. Fascinating solutions to problems that everybody has, and so this is really great. I appreciate you spending some time with us today. And again, they're going to get a hold of you by nick@distance.so.
Yeah, they
Correct?
could send an email. I'll send a link to get on my calendar that you could include in the show notes here. So it'll be a direct link to my calendar. So if they want to use that, they can do that as
Perfect.
well. Take it from there.
Okay, and I'm looking at my screen. It's NICK for Nick. There's other
That's right.
people who spell a little different. So we got that
Yeah.
nick@distance.so. All right.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much for your time and appreciate the great message and the great value here and for offering a little discount for for the people who are attending this session. So thank you very
Thanks.
much.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.